Alrighty, friends of quantum theory, welcome back to the 8-Sided blog. This is Tennyson E Stead, writer and director of quantum theory, founder of 8-Sided Films. And today I would like to discuss with you a conversation that I've had numerous times and that I keep getting into with friends who are either on the sort of fringe of the industry or new to the craft of acting. And it's an argument I always sort of pick a bone with. I can't help myself. And it's when somebody comes up to me and says that the craft of acting is... there's one or two ways this can go. They'll either tell me acting's about finding the truth, and they'll almost always say this in objection to something I said. That's why I have to sort of, roll around with it. But they'll either say acting is about finding the truth, or acting is about spontaneity, and for both of these reasons that actors have to somehow protect their innocence. And the audience should think that that's the case. That's definitely where the craft takes us, is to a place of spontaneity, to a place of truth. That's certainly the product that you want to create with a performance, okay? But that's not where the performance comes from. When something looks real with an actor, it's because of the specificity with which that actor is performing a task. Acting, as we've discussed many times, is about action. It's about doing something, okay? You tell Christian Bale to get out of the fridge, he's going to go get the milk out of the fridge. You tell the ninjas to stop Christian Bale from getting that milk, the ninjas are going to stop him. Now you've got a scene. That's what it is, okay? That's acting, is go do something. Here's your reason for doing it. It's very urgent. It's really important. Here's a context for you. Here's where you're coming from. Here's why you're doing this thing. That's called a motivation, all right? Now, the truth is that people do things for very complicated reasons. People have lives built up around them that are always competing for their attention and ultimately competing for their motivation. So when you as an actor take on a task and you approach it from a simple unidirectional motivation, I'm a cop, I've got to catch the bad guy, I'm going to go catch the bad guy. Well, that's wooden, because your motivation isn't complex enough, and the impulses that you're getting out of that motivation aren't rich and varied, okay? Specificity is what you see in a performance when actors start to fill in so many of those blanks that even if they're, strictly speaking, just doing the same job, going after the bad guy and trying to catch the bad guy, for example, okay, they're having all of these impulses and having all of these little moments and feelings about what they're doing that are reading on their face, that are complicating the performance, even if they don't complicate the action, right? And there's obvious impulses and there's not obvious impulses. So you're chasing the bad guy, and the bad guy jumps off a rooftop and lands on the next rooftop, okay? Doubt about whether or not you should make that jump is an obvious impulse. That would be a simple thing to experience and to let the audience in on as you're running up to make that jump. That would be clear. Laughing because it's hilarious and ridiculous that this other guy made the jump. And then having that moment of like, well, okay, I guess that's more specific, because how did you arrive at that place? It had to be some very unique personal experiences that made that funny to you, if you're an actor, okay? And that's where the richness of the performance comes in. That's where things get really interesting. Now, it's not just that one moment where you laugh that makes the performance specific. It's a million moments just like that. And where those moments come from is actually rehearsal. All right, it comes from text work, from reading and understanding the text and getting to know your character and figuring out what's going on. And then from there, it comes from rehearsal. It comes from working the material so many times that you don't have to think about whether or not you're going to run and jump over that edge. Your body knows it's going to do that. You're just having feelings about the fact that that's what your body's doing. I don't know if this is such a good idea. Wow! Right? And to have done it so many times that you start to get to know the surprises a little bit. You start to get to know where the twists and turns in that journey are for you personally, emotionally, and in terms of how you handle other people, the looks that you give people to tell them something that's maybe not on the page. All those little twists and turns start to become impulsive and natural. And the point of that is that you get to go a level deeper and you get to discover even more, loose change. You get to discover even more little opportunities and little moments through the rehearsal process. And then you go a level deeper from there and you go down and down and down. And by the time you bring that performance to the audience, there are so many layers of things going on that it looks like a real person is doing this stuff. Looks like a real person is having these experiences because they're having so many responses and so many reactions, so many different things are competing for their attention, and that's what we strive for in our work at Eight-Sided Films. That's definitely the kind of performance work that Quantum Theory and all of our other films are based on and built on, and that's where spectacle comes from. Spectacle is seeing people do things that you didn't really understand people could do. And the first time you saw the Death Star explode, you thought, oh wow, that was spectacular. You didn't really know people could blow that up on screen. You didn't see it coming. But now we've seen it 10 or 12 or 15 times or however many times, and we're not surprised. If somebody blows up a whole universe at this point, we're going to watch it for what it is, but I doubt very seriously we'll have that moment of like, what's happening? I doubt very seriously any of us will be so surprised that it could be justly called a spectacular experience. Whereas we always underestimate each other. We always underestimate people. Somebody shows a performance that's so layered, has so many different things going on, and this is where you become human. It looks spontaneous because they're having all of these intimate revelations that they couldn't have possibly had 10 times. But that's, you're just seeing 15 layers of performance or 10 layers of performance, or probably more like 4 or 5, because that's about as deep as you can go before you start to go crazy. But you see that, and you have that moment of disbelief that it's anything other than a real person there on the screen. And that disbelief is so strong and so powerful that you actually tell yourself people can't do that. People are incapable of doing that. And you make up a story that it's spontaneous, that it must be improv. It must have just happened. No, it didn't just happen. Acting isn't about stuff just happening. Acting is about actors doing stuff so many times and with increasing levels of detail in their performance and increasing levels of specificity that eventually it starts to look like real life. That's what acting is. That's what makes performances great. That's what we should all aspire for and towards. That is the end of this vlog. Thank you for joining me. This is Tennyson E Stead, signing off.